Hello, in this quick video, I want to show how to deploy a developer edition of Teradata Database on Azure from the Azure Marketplace. So first place to note is where you go to find information about Teradata on Azure. Teradata.com has a microsite, teradata.com/Azure, where you can read about the products. You can click to see which products are available in the marketplace, which editions. We are going to deploy the developer edition that is free, and we will be able to see which nodes and what features are supported by each edition right on this page. And as you can see, we can deploy the developer edition using the 15 VMs. There is just an hourly fee for the infrastructure, but Teradata license fees do not apply to those VMs. And they use local SSD storage. So if you shut down the VMs, you will lose the data on those. So it's great for development and keeping them on, but not where you want to put your real production database. For that, you want to deploy the paid editions that are applicable. So as the next step, let's go back to the products page. And from the products page, we have a link to the Azure Marketplace. You can obviously go directly to the Azure Marketplace, and it will show all the products that Teradata has in the marketplace. You can see quite a lot of different products. We are going to be deploying the solution template called Teradata Database, right? So just let's click here, and we'll see what are the products and plans that are available. And if we do need to have sufficient core quota in the account to deploy that, and we may also need to pick the right resources in that subscription. You can click Get It Now button here, and it will take you to the Azure portal. So let's do that. So I'll say Continue. It will redirect me to my Azure portal, and will open up the template that I'm trying to deploy. I'll say Create. I'm going to put it in my MSDN subscription, and you'll see a screen with multiple steps. It looks like a lot of steps, but not all of these steps are required. So let's go quickly and fill it out. So we'll keep the username for the OS. By default, we'll use a password for the login into SSH. If we need to manage the nodes through Jambox later, we'll pick the subscription where we're going to put the database. We're going to create a new resource group. So Teradata 1, and we're going to put it in the East US 2 region, for example. For my subscription, you want to put it in the region that's relevant to you. On the next step, we're going to fill out some information. So the prefix for the nodes of the database that will be used is provided in this box. So we'll just provide this as kind of the administrator password for the DBC user. So I'm going to provide this password here. Japanese language support, yes or no? We're going to keep it no. We're going to deploy the latest version, so both versions are available. And we're going to pick the developer tier, right? So the sizes and the number of nodes we can deploy depends on the tier we pick, just like we displayed it. So we will pick the developer edition. It will give us the specific sizes that we can deploy. This is the size that we will be using. Select that size, and let's deploy a one node cluster instead of a two node cluster. It only supports local storage, as we saw on the previous step, right? So if I let's just, for example, pick an enterprise edition, you can see I can pick premium storage depending on how much storage per node I need. But for the developer edition that we'll be using, it's only local storage. Row level security no, security zones no. These are Teradata specific features that you may be familiar with, so I'll just keep it simpler at the default. We will also want to deploy the Viewpoint. The Viewpoint is a management a portal for Teradata database. So we are going to deploy the Viewpoint with the prefix Viewpoint, the nickname of the system that it will pre-register there called Teradata. It will also need a password that we can use later to log in, and it has certain requirements for this password, so we'll just follow those so I don't forget what I just put in. Um, and we will see that it's a single system because we are deploying a developer edition, which is free. This single system comes with it, the size of the VM on which Viewpoint will run. And then the other sections will allow us to deploy additional components that we want. Server management, we will skip it. Teradata REST services, we will skip that. So basically exposing Teradata via REST API Data Stream Controller, Ecosystem Manager, Data Mover is not available in Developer Tier at all. And Query Grid Manager, not available. General Settings, we will deploy this because I'm deploying a clean greenfield installation. I'm just going to create a new virtual network. So it shows me, okay, do you want to use an existing virtual network or create a new one? I'll create one like this with this default address space, which is pretty large. In reality, you don't need as much address space, so we can, cut it down if we wanted to. And then you need three subnets for Teradata today. You need a subnet for where the VMs, the application servers will be accessing the database from. That's this VM subnet. And you need what's called the BiNet subnets. And we will create all of these subnets automatically. And the right NICs of the database nodes will be in the right network subnets. They talk to each other using the BiNet. NTP server list, and the default UTC zone on the database. You can pick your different time zone if you want. I'll just keep it as UTC. And the next step, it will run a validation of my deployment, making sure my subscription has enough resources to deploy this environment. So maybe I don't, but let's see. So running the validation right in this moment. It seems to have said it's okay. And we'll kick off the deployment by saying okay. And reviewing the terms of service. This is the terms of service from Teradata. So make sure that you understand what it's relevant, what it can be used for the developer edition, and say create. It's going to kick off the deployment right now. And you can see, in my case, it pinned it to the dashboard, but if not, you can always browse to it by going to the resource group we just created. Okay, and we can see the deployment is progressing, right? So the virtual network is being created. As we refresh, we can see more things appearing. A network security group is being created with some security rules added there for us. Okay, and if you can see the diagnostic storage account being created, the NICs for the node being created, and then if you click on the deployment, you can watch the deployment progress by clicking refresh and seeing what it's doing right now. So this is applicable to all deployments in Azure. If you click on the template, you will be able to see these are the parameters we specified. And you can see there's quite a few. And the database creation is taking place right now. It's running the sub template just to see where we are at here. It's creating the actual virtual machine right now. Okay, so I will pause the video and we'll get back to this as soon as we see where the deployment ended up at. But right now it's in the middle of creating. While waiting for the download to finish, for the installation to finish, actually, we can see it's still running. It's a good idea to download the Teradata Studio. Teradata Studio is a tool that you can use to manage Teradata. So just search for Teradata Studio download. You'll get to the Teradata site, all downloads like this. And I found Studio right here. It will ask you to log in. So you create a free account, you provide your information, and once you're logged in, you click and download. I downloaded and it came up with a zip file, about 200 megabyte zip file that I have now, and I will install the zip file on a virtual machine that I have running in the cloud, just so that we can use it to connect to Teradata from like a Windows Eclipse-based UI, and we'll make it easier to explore it. It has multiple ways to explore tables, but this is one that could be convenient. So we'll get back to it in a minute. So the download finished and it's sitting right now on my virtual machine. So let's try to install it. This is just the studio itself. So we'll run the setup. Once the setup is running, so after specifying the Jerry environment, we're going to deploy it. Continuing with the installation. Once Teradata Studio is installed, we can run it. skip the tour. And once the database is actually deployed, we will be able to connect to it. We will need the location, etc. So let's go back to check the status of the deployment. Checking status of the deployment, we can see that some of the nodes already finished deploying. So we have the database has been deployed. Let's see how long it took. So it took about 20 minutes to configure it and about 3 minutes to create the infrastructure. And now it's deploying the last piece, which is the Viewpoint server. And it took 2 minutes to create the VM. And it's right now configuring the VM. So that will take a couple more minutes. So it's about a half an hour process to deploy the full cluster. So we can see the deployment succeeded. It still shows as deploying, but it's done. Let's just take a quick look. So it took about 30 minutes to deploy the full thing. This is the resource group, how it looks now that it is fully deployed. You can notice that Teradata does not deploy with a public IP on purpose to make this secure by default. So there is no public IP assigned to anything. Therefore, you cannot access anything right now unless you have a jump box already in the same virtual network. So let's make the viewpoint accessible through its network card. So let's just attach it to this network card, the public IP address. So you click on the network card, IP configuration, click on here, public IP enabled. Select we want to create a new one, Teradata 1, and we'll do just a dynamically assigned public IP and save it. This will take a second. And once it's done, we will get a public IP assigned to the VM. So it seems like it created a public IP, so you can see it right here. Right there. Let's give this public IP a DNS name. So click on its configuration. Okay, so we'll give it a DNS name so it's a little easier to use, and that will take a second to save. Saved. And now when we go to the public IP, we should be able to access the viewpoint via the web and also via SSH and use it as a jump box to connect to other nodes in the cluster, right? So we go to the viewpoint, it will ask us to log in. That's the password. I think I remembered. No, not this one. Yep, this one. And you can see it automatically, this management UI for the database configured for us, a dashboard showing us our database right here. And the Viewpoint is a powerful tool with a lot of abilities to configure things. So this is what we are seeing right this moment on this tool. And we can add more information to this tool as we go. So on the home page, we can say add tool, let's say add a SQL Scratchpad, add it. So there's a lot of components within Viewpoint. And then we can select our system. So this is like a mini database here. Database, SQL query browser. So you can see right now, I'm not obviously going to succeed in this. It's going to say the table doesn't exist. Okay, object doesn't exist. So to create a database, we'll just create database arson with small size and fallback protection enabled. We'll switch to database arson. We'll create a table in that. We'll search the record and we'll select the record, and you can see the result. And you can see in this object browser the existing databases in the system. Prior to be able to connect to the database from the studio, we need to add a public IP to the database itself. So we'll just do the same exercise as we did before. Create new VM Teradata 1 DB0. So okay, and then we'll add the domain name for that public IP. So now we have the public IP defined and created. Let's see if we can connect to it from the studio. So we will go to the studio here, put the database server, DBC, and our password, and let's test the connection. So as we saw, connection failed. Why does it fail? Is because we need to open the specific port to connect to database. How do we find the port? Just go to the Teradata site, documentation, HTML guide, and search for ports. Then we can see which ports we need to open. So network security groups for Teradata database, we need to open port 1025. Let's make sure. See, it's not open right now. So let's just add an inbound rule. Again, it's all done on purpose to prevent any access. 1025 inadvertently to an important database. Okay, so that port will now get opened. So if we refresh the rules, we can see now we open this port. Usually you would define this to be TCP and specific source, but for now I just opened it from everywhere. See if now that the port is open, we can connect. Test connection. Perfect. We had to use the right password. Next, finish. And we're going to get our database viewable to us right here. And if you remember, this is the one we created before. And we can see the data available to us. And that's our table. And this is the definition of the table. And if you want to run some queries against the table, we can see those tables right here, columns, basically as you would expect. And there we go, right? So that is a tool through which we can select from the right database and table. Right there is the data. Let's also connect via SSH. So we connected via SSH. So I'll just show you how we do it. We take the IP, we connect via SSH. The username is the Azure user, that's what we used. And once we're connected, we sudo, and then we run the bteq tool. We say logon, dbc, and the password, database arson, and we do select from T1. And then we can see our data insert into T1. We insert some data, and we select some data. So that shows how to connect to the database from both the command line as well as from the studio, as well as via the connection that we have inside of a viewpoint right here. It will give a couple errors because it will run all of these tools at the same time. So I'll just instead select run selection. Should see both rows there. So that is the database view. And if we switch to here, we can see our queries from the monitoring UI and what other information was taking place. This is a very powerful monitoring tool that we have available. And that's it. So at this point, if we want to get rid of the installation that we had deployed, that's what I will do. I'll just go to Azure, the resource group in question carefully. Obviously, I am going to just delete this resource group fully. and that will, in a few minutes, get rid of this whole database installation. And next videos, we can look at some other abilities to backup from Teradata to blob storage and restore from there, as well as import tables and export tables into blob storage. Thanks for watching.